Okay, we're ready to get started here. Apologies for the delay, everyone. We are having some computer system issues. Welcome to the July 30th Comox Valley Recreation Commission meeting. I'd like to acknowledge that we have Director Arbor, Director Kerr, and alternate Director Jolly Kerr online today. And we'll begin by acknowledging that the lands on which we gather are the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. And our first item today is a delegation follow-up from the Comox Valley Minor Hockey Association. Did staff want to speak to that?
Sure, thanks very much. So to the Commission, good afternoon. Just a couple of updates on this delegation that you received on June 25th. A couple of the asks from the delegation included more ice for programming and secondly, better Wi-Fi in the sports center. And as far as updates go, I can say that the recreation programs team is doing a comprehensive review of all recreation programs and schedule. We expect that review to take place over the next several months, but will be complete in time to consider whether changes are warranted in the fall of 2025. And on the Wi-Fi front, staff are reaching out to tell us to see if they can install more public Wi-Fi access points, and in particular provide the CVRD with a quote to upgrade that Wi-Fi access for user groups only. If possible, this would be for dedicated use by organizations like minor hockey and lacrosse for their programming. But it wouldn't be available to the general public for general internet use, I think, because of some of the technical limitations. So happy to answer any questions, and we will also got our recreation staff here if any other questions come in. So
thanks for providing that update. I don't see any lights on in the room, and there's no hands online. We didn't do a receipt motion, so we'll just move on to the next item. The next up is the resolution status report. Could I get a motion for receipt, please? Moved by Grant, seconded by Grieve. Any discussion on the item? Seeing none, anyone opposed to receipt? And that's carried. And moving on to reports. We have the 2024 recreation grant applications report carried over from our previous meeting. Could I get a motion? Second. Moved by Hillian, seconded by Grant. Did staff want to speak to that?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Jennifer Zbinden, our Acting General Manager of Community Services, will be introducing this report and can take any questions. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll just wait for the PowerPoint to pop up. Thank you, Lisa. So just reiterating today's report is to review the applications for the recreation grants as part of the Comox Valley Regional District. At the June 2024 meeting, the Recreation Commission considered the 3 applications for grant funding that are noted in this report and deferred a decision to today's Recreation Commission meeting. Topics raised during the June meeting related to access to grant funding, specific details about the proposed programming, and criteria for successful applicants. Through this, the financial department has been reviewing the grant process and reviewing and re-engineering for consistencies in the approval and the set of criteria for the commonalities. So that will be, they continue to do that assessment. This report reiterates the original requests and includes the full application from each organization. Again, the budget for this service is $892,794 to primarily support the Courtney Outdoor Pool. Several other agencies are also supported annually during budget presentations. A $30,000 allocation is in the budget for special events and game contributions to support requests that may come forth throughout 2024. Applications to date were a total of 48,524, with the Blazing Paddle Dragon Boat Society for up to 1,500 for the process of promoting participation in the dragon boating within communities. The requested funds are to support the inclusion of the Comox Valley head injury clientele in a fun outdoor group activity, and the monies will also cover insurance costs and boat maintenance. The second one is the Hornby Island Athletic Association, where they have a request of up to $39,524 for the purpose of facility improvements and equipment upgrades. The minimum amount needed to complete the resurfacing project is 25,000. And so the request is up to 39. Mount Washington Freestyle Club is the third one for up to 7,500 for the purpose of promoting freestyle skiing programs within the community. And the requested funds are going to support the fees for the coaches and the judges that are brought in for the Timber Tour National Ski Competition. And this will help keep the registration fees for the competitors down, making the competitions more accessible. And one thing to really note is they are a small club with no sponsorship. So that's all we have. And on that note, in closing, the Rec Commission is being asked to consider the applications for the grant allocation up to 30,000 to one or more of these three applicants. And I'll just go back and give you the three applicants one more time. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And I think it's helpful to recap where we left the discussion and provide the additional information that's included here. I know some people were away from the last meeting and we're kind of picking up where we left off. So I appreciate that. Did any of the directors want to weigh in with some thoughts, or Director Morin?
Great, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I appreciated getting a little bit more information. The Blazing Paddles to me is a good fit in terms of where the funds are directly going to the folks with head injuries. I would like a little bit more information about the Hornby request, as it's more of an infrastructure type of request that I'm wondering if it seems like many of the infrastructure requests through Area A would go through that other granting process. So I'm just wondering about the difference there. And then the piece with Mount Washington, I was noting, you know, that obviously their revenue is a lot higher than the other, well, definitely higher than Blazing Paddles. And I guess when we're looking at the equity piece, I mean, in the narrative, it talks about how it's accessible, the activities are accessible, et cetera. I think I brought this up before. I think it would be really great if there was a way to capture more of that information of the organizations, like how many subsidies do they provide and things like that, because it doesn't look like that's captured with Mount Washington. It just seems like, I think it's over $100,000 that they bring in with registration. So I guess I'm just wondering about the piece around yeah, how much that group needs the funding, considering they also have MRDT funds available for special events at Mount Washington. So, and of course, the funding is requested to go to coaches, and I saw that there is a fairly high line item for the regular coaching staff. That was the bulk of their expenses. So I don't know if you can clarify the piece around Hornby and a little bit more about Mount Washington, but I certainly don't have an issue with the 1,500 request for Blazing Paddles. Thank you.
I think I can speak to the Hornby Island Athletic Association. The rural areas, rural community grants service, I think is what you were referring to. And that is a consideration that the electoral area directors do give to applications several times each year. In the case of the Hornby Island Athletic Association, I think we distinguished that as having a recreation focus because of the purpose of the association itself. And so that's why it's directed here to this particular grant application.
Thanks for that. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Jennifer, or?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, thanks. And sorry, go ahead, Director Morin.
Yeah, and just a quick follow-up. I'm not sure if staff can answer the question around the MRDT DT funds, but I mean, Mount Washington does have those funds available, which are for special events and other things. So I'm just, yeah, it just seems like they may have some access to other funds that the other organizations don't. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think the given the nature of this particular part of the service, the recreation grant service, we're presenting to you the applications that are being made with the information that's being provided. We have not done a deep dive as maybe what you're looking for to provide those kinds of answers. And so in the application package itself, I think that's your best source of information at this time.
Thanks. And we'll move on to Director Brown. If I can just get this to. Sorry, my screen is frozen. Should I refresh it?
There we go. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I had a question about I guess there was some funding provided last year for timber tour for the ski club. Or I'm curious if there was funding given for that. Because I think that's part of what they were applying for, and it was canceled last year. So just wondering if we funded that and then it was canceled. Also, they don't mention how many skiers they have. I'm struggling to see the equity piece in this application. So I'm leaning towards sort of funding. I think the Hornby Island Athletic Association, that project serves a whole lot of people. It's open to anyone on the island. The paddle boat is obviously the equity pieces around head injuries, but I'm struggling to see that the inclusive equity piece for the freestyle club. They do have a lot of sponsors listed on their website, so I'm not sure whether those are old ones or what, but they have several levels of sponsorship on their website, but there's no information about how many kids they're serving. And the membership to that group is also very expensive. It's just under $1,000, I think, to join that club. So I'm assuming that the kids who are in the teens that are in that club have more access to, for instance, very expensive ski equipment and all that stuff. So, but I'm happy to give them, if we have $30,000, giving the 1,500 to the dragon boat, and the minimum, I guess, to the Hornby Island, which I thought was 22, but then I just reread the application as 25, and whatever's left, maybe to the Mount Washington Freestyle Club is where I'm leaning. The other question I had was, is there an intake for these applications, or is it open all year round? So could there be more funding requests coming? Is there an interest to keep some money aside or anything?
Through the chair. So I believe staff believe the process is that there's a one-time intake process.
Okay.
And then once that process is completed for the year.
Okay, so we should be spending all the 30,000. Okay, that's my thinking so far.
Thanks for those comments and question. Is there anyone else that would like to weigh in on this? Otherwise I'll, we've got Director Hardy. Go ahead, please. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Just had a couple of questions, I guess, regarding Hornby Island and some of the expenses for the budget for 24. One of them being the clubhouse maintenance being at $80,000. Another expense is multi-purpose for 41,000, and then there's another expense for winter drop-in. So just kind of wondering if we could get a little bit more detail as to those expenses. Thanks.
Through the chair, staff would have to go back and do further research to dive into some of those items to get more details.
Yeah, again, the multi-purpose court, I guess, is budget for 41,000, so. I'm just kind of curious about that expense and what's being asked for from the CBRD for 39,000. Is there any detail or?
Through the chair, the detail that we have that's been provided in the report is what we have, and staff would need to report back with a further deep dive if requested.
Thanks for that. And Director Grieve, I had to turn your mic off because I was clicking the wrong button. Please go ahead.
I'm just going to circle back to Mount Washington and, you know, remind everybody that it's a real big recreational asset to the Comox Valley that really doesn't tap into our resources at all. The mountain pays taxes like everybody else. It pays into the service. You have to remember as well that we have produced more than our share of world-class athletes from Mount Washington. So I don't see this as being a huge ask. They're asking for a little over $7,000. So I can't see it, you know, obviously, you know, the bulk of what we pay into the service stays in the city of Courtenay. This is one chance to actually extend it out to Area C and to a world-class mountain that like as they say, you know, it provides a lot of recreation for people. I don't think that it should be not supported because of some perceptions of equality. There are people who do ski, they get secondhand equipment and manage to, you know, get their youth passes and still make a big difference in the quality of their ability. Some right up to the point of being competitive on the world stage. So I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments. We have Doug DeMarzo on Zoom who wanted to weigh in maybe on Director Hardy's question. Is that what your hand is up for? Go ahead.
Yes, thanks. Back to Director Hardy's question regarding this court surfacing and the rest of the remaining funds that they were seeking in regards to around 45,000 is we spoke with them, and the key piece is the surfacing can be done for up to the 25,000 that staff noted in the report. The other pieces for that sport court include surrounding walls, some vegetation control, and other pieces that they'd have to fundraise up to that 40,000 if they wanted to do the whole project as one. So that's kind of some more information around the total cost of the ideal situation to upgrade the entirety of that sports court.
Thanks for providing that context. And Director Brown.
Thanks. And with all due appreciation to Mount Washington, they are a massive asset to our community and to recreation in the valley, obviously, but this ask is not from Mount Washington, it's from the Freestyle Club. So I'm happy to make a motion to fund Blazing Paddles by 1,500 and Hornby Island Athletic Association with 25,000 and the remaining, I think, 35,000, if I did the math right, 3,500, sorry, to the Mount Washington Freestyle Club.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're still on receipt, so we'll
Okay.
dispense with that and then I'll come back to you. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? Oh. Go ahead, Director Hardy.
Yeah, thanks. So again, just looking at the budget from Hornby Island and their budget expenses, I just, again, the three big items that I see in their budget for 24 are about $131,000. So there's clubhouse maintenance of 80,000, a multi-purpose court for 41,000, and then there's the winter drop-in, which I really don't quite understand what the winter drop-in expense is about. But again, those three items alone in their budget is well over $130,000. So I'm just wondering if they were looking at their budget a little bit more differently, that maybe one or two of those items could come out. Okay, thanks. And it would, you know, again, help them with regards to what it is that they're asking for from us. Thanks.
Thanks for that comment. And we'll go back to Director Brown. Oh, actually, we'll dispense with receipt. Director Jolicoeur, did you want to ask your question before we dispense with receipt? Okay, we'll dispense with receipt then. Anyone opposed?
I have
none.
my hand up, Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't see you, Director Arbor. Go ahead.
Yeah, I thought I would just address Dr. Hardy's questions a little more. So in the case of the Athletic Association, there's numerous activities that happen at that site and that they are in charge of. It's one of the big social hubs on Hornby, and when it talks about the winter drop-in, it's actually an entirely different program that happens there. There's actually a soup kitchen and different social services that happen there in addition to baseball. And so when you look at that 131,000, I think you would be impressed by how much they do, the number of activities, and they're all funded through different streams. And this organization is almost never, as I believe, other than during COVID when we supported the kitchen. I believe they have not had a lot of funding from the regional district at all. So so I thought I'd just provide that context to those amounts.
Yeah, thanks for providing that additional context, Director Arbor. Director Jolicoeur, did you want to ask your question or make a comment now, or would you rather do it after we dispense with receipt?
After receipt is fine, thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, anyone opposed to receipt? Seeing none, that's carried. We'll move on to the motion. I'll call on Director Brown.
I'd like to move that we allocate, sorry, I need my numbers again, 1,500 to the Blazing Paddles Dragon Boat Society, 25,000 to the Hornby Island Athletic Association, and 3,500 to Mount Washington Freestyle Club.
Okay, that's moved by Brown, seconded by Morin, and we'll move to discussion on the motion, and I'll call on Director Jolicoeur first.
Sorry, I put my hand down.
Oh, okay, perfect. Did anyone else want to comment or weigh in on the motion? Director Grieve.
Yeah, we had quite an extensive conversation at the Electoral Area Services Committee around our rural community grant funding, and it's quite acceptable to carve out a little bit of the money that's being asked for and to horse trade a little bit back and forth. So I'm quite happy with Director Brown's motion. I think we got a little bit for everybody.
Thanks for that. And I saw your light on, Director Hardy. Are you good? Okay, seeing, oh, could we get the people back on Zoom? Just can't see if there's hands. It looks like everyone online is good. And so I will call the question. All those in favor? And is there anyone opposed? And that carries unanimously. All right, and so we are moving on to the Arena 3 feasibility study next steps. Moved by Hillian, seconded by Grant, and I'll pass this to staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before Trish Morgan, our Assistant Senior Manager of Recreation Services, presents this report and introduces the consultants who are supporting this work, I wanted to provide some context. The Recreation Commission, you will recall the heavy lifting that you did in the winter and spring of last year, which resulted in the Recreation Commission approving its strategic planning vision and a capital planning framework on March 21st, 2023. That decision recognized the importance of investing in recreation infrastructure in the Comox Valley, which has not occurred in a substantial way since the Aquatic Center opened in 1999 and the first artificial turf was constructed in 2014. The decision also set a path to achieve those investments in a fiscally responsible way by having a plan to increase tax requisitions in an incremental fashion to address the Commission's priorities. The projects or facilities, as a reminder, are a second artificial turf playing field, a third sheet of ice, and additional aquatics infrastructure in that order of priority. Layered onto these projects was a decarbonization strategy for the recreation facilities to reduce greenhouse gas production and work towards the CVRD's climate action goals. The report before you today relates to the potential for an additional ice surface. And as Trish will note in the presentation, it's important that we advance this work early to ensure that we are performing due diligence and understanding risks and benefits well before a decision is made to actually invest in such a facility. So with that introduction, Trish, I'll pass it over to you, and we're all available here for the discussion to follow.
Great, thank you, James. So I'd like to introduce our team from HCMA Architecture and Design who are zooming in with us today. They'll be leading us through the feasibility study process and the results of the report. So today we have with us Darren Harding and James Cocotillo, who are architects with HCMA. And Darren is also a principal with the firm, and he will be leading the presentation. This process started last fall and included engagement with CVRD and Comox Valley School staff, and it built on a lot of other information that had been collected in the past by the CVRD. One of the primary objectives of the study was to examine whether a third arena could be sited on the Vanier Sports Center campus, which is confirmed to be possible, although there are some constraints, which we'll talk about in the presentation. So Darren's going to lead us through the options that were developed and discuss the designs, the pros and cons, and the costs. And once he's done doing that, then I'll introduce the recommendations in the staff report. So we'd like to hand it off to Darren now.
Good afternoon. Hi. Just trying to share my screen, and let me know if are you guys able to see the screen?
Not yet, although you should have the power to make it come up, but we're not seeing it yet.
It's showing on my side that it's sharing.
Could you just try it one more time?
Sure, I'll stop here and I'll share again here. Share one. Any luck now?
Unfortunately not.
We can see it online.
Oh, you can see it online?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay, we'll use the PDF in the room and go from there in that case.
Okay. Well, great. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me here to share the summary of the work that we've been doing on the Arena 3 feasibility study. So I'm going to move on to the third page, the scope of the study, and share that what was all included within this process. So it was the preparation of 3 conceptual design options, studying the addition of an NHL ice surface, the addition of 1,500 to 2,000 spectator seats, either through a new build, new construction, or through adding additional seats to Arena 1, the addition of 6 to 8 dressing rooms, the extension of an overhead walkway around Arena 1, and additional parking to meet the needs. Also included in this was the acknowledgement that there is a decarbonization strategy that's happening in parallel, and it was to acknowledge that this study should communicate with that process to look for opportunities for GHG reduction throughout this process. And lastly, to provide a Class D cost estimate for each of the design options. On the next page, identifying the existing facilities as well as planned. We're familiar with the Comox Valley Sports Center, which is adjacent to the Vanier Secondary School, but there are 3 additional facilities planned. One, a future field house that's directly above the artificial turf. One, a future daycare facility that is south of the school, and also a future artificial turf field. Through the process, we did an environmental assessment to understand the environmental constraints on the site. And 5 different areas were studied and identified through that process. Area number 1 is directly adjacent to the Comox Valley Sports Center, and this showed that there was not room enough for a third arena due to the setbacks with the Tahi Creek. Area number 2 was a large mature Gary Oak zone, which also made it not possible to provide one there. Area number 3 is a densely forested with a lot of topography and difficult access, so that was also deemed challenging to put there. Area number 4 was a wetlands area, so deemed not suited for construction, but for other pieces that could fit there. And area number 5 was deemed the most viable of the locations. So based on that information, we chose 3 different options to explore and to identify. Area number 1 directly attached to the existing community center. Area number 2 in the same area of that zone, but pulled off of it slightly. And then area 3 down at the south side of the site, where we could have a separate zone for this facility. The next slide, we did do a parking analysis for all of the different options, and each of the options required in the range of 440 stalls, and due to the City of Courtenay bylaw and the possibility that's available on the site ranged, depending on the option, between 300 and 385. So due to the constraints of the sites, it would be determined that we would need to request a variance for that, which is typical for this type of construction. And we would recommend that happen through the form of a traffic and parking analysis through a traffic engineer, and they could provide that a variance. We did hold meetings with the planning department to make sure that this is a feasible or a viable request to provide in the future. So going through the design options, we have 3 areas showing new build spectator arena. And option 1 here is showing the arena directly attached to the existing facility. And on the left-hand side of the building, we've provided additional area for bus parking, and we've provided access from both sides of the site, recognizing that there is quite a bit of traffic, vehicular and pedestrian traffic, coming from the school. So in that slide, you'll see 2 orange triangles that represents 2 entrances from either side of the site to provide access to this facility. Due to the location of the building, the parking needed to extend southward and also created an indirect route for vehicular traffic that currently passes through the site. So in this option, we're proposing that vehicular traffic from Vanier School would not carry over, and that bridge would be changed to a pedestrian bridge, but that there would be a bus turnaround on the Vanier site, and vehicular traffic would turn around on their site and back out in that way. The next slide shows a 3-dimensional floor plan to help understand what is all included in this feasibility study. So entry, the existing gray building on the top left-hand side of the page is the existing building, and then the yellow internal street would represent the entrances coming from either side of the site. Coming through the internal street, you would enter into the arena, which is at the lower level of the arena, and you would have an arena lobby and access to skate rental and stairs to get up to the spectator seating. On the lower level, we have 8 dressing rooms, one of them including a junior A size change room. The back part of it is the ice plant and maintenance areas. The top part of it would be areas for administration and an additional CRU that could face onto the internal street. Recognizing this internal street and the benefits of it, we've got a few images here on the next slide that indicate the possibilities that it can provide for a community facility such as this to create a social gathering and a community hub on this street. And this internal street could provide opportunities for cafes. The orange rectangles represent sizes of market booths or things like that if you wanted to hold events alongside this area. The next page represents the second floor, and this shows the bowl spectator seating, the 2,000 seats that wrap around the ice. And spectators would come up the stairs or an elevator and then they would have access to this upper concourse. The upper concourse would have a walking and running track that would circle around the extent of the seating. There would also be a multipurpose room that could be used for multipurpose reasons or for dedicated VIP spaces during key events. There's also a concession space on this upper level as well as washrooms. So moving to the next slide, option number 1, recognizing the opportunities and challenges. The key opportunity to this one is that being adjacent to the existing facility creates an opportunity for efficiency and synergy for a reception and administration space. In this scenario, you would not need to duplicate your administration, which is a large advantage. And then also this internal community programming could happen in this internal street in between the two facilities. The challenges of this one would be that we are removing the vehicular connection to Vanier, and also there is a lower parking count compared to some of the other ones due to the lots of existing stalls because we're putting the building right where there's a lot of existing stalls. This option cost range is in the range of 74 to $97 million. And we'll get into the costing a little bit later on. Option 2 is would be a similar size of building, and it would be pulled across the parking lot south of the existing facility and closer to the track and field. And this building would be at the lower level would be at the parking level. So you'd be coming in similar to the floor plan that I showed in option 1. And the difference here is that there is a large grade change in the site. And so as you come down, it would create additional space available that would face onto the track and field. And so this is an opportunity to use a bit of space as the foundation of this facility to give back to program space adjacent to the track and field. And so we've done a quick test fit here in terms of a pickleball court could be put in there. You could obviously put change rooms and storage that would directly face out onto the track and field, which would be an additional amenity to those uses. So in terms of option 2, a large advantage of this one is the additional amenities that it provides to the track and field. It maintains vehicular connection with the Vanier school. And the challenges here is that while it's navigating this grade, there's additional cost for fill and moving earth around. For that, it also requires us to relocate the throwing cage that's currently there. And that being separate from the existing building, it requires a split between administration support. And the project cost for this one is in the range of $76 to $100 million. Option 3, this one is located on the south side of the site near Headquarters Road. And this facility would be down here on the south side. And what this one does is it builds in the place of the third field that is currently planned in that area, and it relocates that over to the opposite side of Schlick Drive. And so the opportunities here is that the separation of this facility would mitigate vehicular traffic congestion on the northern part of the site. And then the challenges being that there's also operational higher challenges because you don't have that synergy between buildings, and that southern field needing to relocate that would potentially be included as a cost to the project. This one is costed at the range of $70 to $93 million. And so now looking at a new build community arena. So what is possible if we remove the spectator component and if we add a third arena at a community scale? And so this is the conceptual design for that scenario where we would locate it similar to option 1, so directly adjacent the existing facility, which allows for synergies for operations and minimizes administrative costs. We still continue those access and entry points from both sides of the site. And this would be an NHL size sheet. We're still planning here 6 dressing rooms and a number of support functions there. So opportunities here, this gives an opportunity to expand CVRD programs, community rentals. It provides that third sheet of ice. It's efficient in terms of its operation because of its co-location with the facility. The challenges would be that spectator events need to remain in Arena 1, and we're still modifying the vehicular traffic throughout the site. The cost range in this one would be in the range of $37 to $49 million. So lastly, there's a few explorations in terms of renovations with Arena 1. What can we do with Arena 1 that can support the demand and needs? And so what is possible in terms of adding spectator seating to Arena 1? And so we studied the most viable way to add seating, which would be on the left-hand side of the page here. And that is so because the structure is oriented north-south on the page and it continues on. And so if we were to add seating on the top side of the page, you would have columns fitting in between spectator seating and would obstruct views, and you'd have to add onto the building in a non-efficient way. So that became challenging to do that. And so expanding to the left of the page here is a very simple addition to the facility and gives an opportunity to add approximately 500 seats. And the orange in here would be the new construction. The cost for this would be somewhere in the range of $4 to $6 million. And the last thing we studied was the desire to have a walking running track around the existing Arena 1. And so there, what we're showing here is orange would be a suspended track that would go around, and then the orange on the left-hand side would be a slight addition to the facility so that we could get the track around the existing spectator seating and not reduce seating count. And this would be in the range of $1.5 to $2 million. And so as we talk about cost estimates, one of the reasons why we're sharing a range with you today is that in the typical process of developing a project is you go through different classes of accuracy. And so we're at the far end of this scale. We are here in the orange. This is a Class D cost estimate, which means that we are at a predicted plus or minus 20 to 25% accuracy because it is a very high level and conceptual design. And as you move through the design and you layer on detail and you work through the process and you're getting close to a tender ready, which means you've worked through all of the details, you get down to a pre-tender price of somewhere around plus or minus 5%, and then you tender it, and then you know the actual cost of the project. And so nobody knows how much a building or project is going to cost until that tender price hits. And so moving towards that, there's always this accuracy funnel that you're working through as you get towards that. Mm-hmm. And so this slide is, we'll probably spend some time on this during questions, but this one is an analysis through the different 4 options. 1 through 3 have spectator seating. Option 4 is the one where we've removed spectator seating, and it is the community rink. And so we see a range from 73, we see the range of costs as we go through here. And I'm happy to spend some time talking about what is all included through the cost, included in that cost number, if there's questions about the amount of contingencies, soft costs, and things that are included within that costing range. So maybe I'll pass it back over to Trish.
She's just returning to her seat. She was helping us with the slides, so just one moment.
Thanks, Darren. So now in terms of recommendations, staff are recommending that we proceed with the development of a business case that examines and compares the opportunities, benefits, and costs of constructing and operating a spectator arena or a community rink. So as it's noted in the feasibility study, we feel that the options where the arena is connected to the sports center are the most suitable options for further examination from an operational point of view. However, option 2 also provides some additional flexible space that's needed in the community and may be a benefit. So if we move forward with the business case is going to provide an objective analysis for the commission to examine these options. It'll include a financial feasibility study, a market demand, economic impact study, social and community benefits, a risk assessment, some stakeholder analysis, how it aligns with the recreation strategic plan and the board's drivers, and a decision-making tool. And we feel it's important to advance this early in order to have the building blocks in place for an objective analysis of the options for the commission's consideration in order to consider whether to move forward with an option in the future. There is no commitment to move forward to construction if the commission decides to move forward with the business case, but that business case will provide those foundational blocks that will provide information on which type of arena may be suitable and if another arena is needed in the Comox Valley. The second recommendation we have is that the study be shared with Comox Valley schools to seek feedback on the potential footprint of a third arena and the opportunities or impacts to GP Vanier Secondary School, the traffic flow, parking, and adjacent shared recreation amenities. So we have engaged staff, Comox Valley school staff, in at different points through the feasibility study process. However, the Board of Education has not been engaged in this, and now it would be suitable that they have an opportunity to provide some feedback and opportunities for questions or bring forward their concerns. Before we get into discussion, I would like to apologize that there is a slight error in the staff report on the first page. We were updating the numbers rapidly on Friday. And so the numbers that Darren presented in the presentation and that are on page 3 are the updated cost estimates. And yeah, so that's where we're at. Is there any questions for me or for Darren or Jennifer?
Yeah, thank you, Trish and Darren, for the presentation. It's a lot of introductory information on this project, and there are plenty of lights on. I will pass it to Director Grant.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just wondering on option 4, would there be the ability to, say, 10 years later, add seating? Or if we built it that way, would we be just where we are?
Through the chair, maybe we'll pass this on to Darren because he would have a better idea of
Sure.
projects expanding in scale over time and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Sure. So the spacing of the arena where the ice is located, it would not allow for the expansion of you would set the ice with its proximity to the existing arena. And if you needed to put seats on both sides of the ice, you would not have the space to do that. There are you could phase that. You could look at ways to adjust things to be able to provide room for it in the future. So that is a possibility. But it is tricky. It's difficult construction to add up on top of an existing facility in the future.
Okay, thank you.
And next we have Director Hardy.
Thanks, sure. Just a couple of comments. First and foremost, I know in the past we've had discussions about how much longer the swimming pool is going to stay there and whether or not that was taken into account with some of the designs of what was provided here today. Another thought, just looking at the various designs, which look pretty cool. But again, just wondering again, with regards to accessibility for other events other than hockey games, whether bay doors should be at both ends of the arena, or if you're having agricultural events or other such events, that the accessibility into the arena would be easier and quicker if we had bay doors at both ends of the arena. And then the third one, I know it's probably pretty expensive, but again, just wondering about the ability for underground parking to address some of the issues with regards to the city of Courtenay and their requirements for parking in and around the area. Thanks.
Through the chair to the director, maybe I'll try to tackle the first question and then maybe Darren can tackle the other two because they're more about design. So we did consider a little bit around whether or not it would make sense to construct an arena where the pool currently exists because of the age of the pool. I believe we went through the exercise to see if it could be sited there and it wasn't necessarily going to fit quite right. So we left that alone for now, and knowing that, the pool is operating okay right now, and that perhaps in the future it could be repurposed for another space. But when they did try to do a conceptual block fit, and Darren, correct me if I'm wrong, putting the arena where the pool is, it was more challenging from a site perspective than the three options that they came up with. And maybe I'll let Darren talk about the bay doors and
Yep.
underground parking.
Yeah, so just on that, Trish, yes, you are correct. By placing the building where the pool is, you do run into site constraints with the setbacks off of the creek as well. So the extent of the building does go into that setback area. In terms of bay doors, typically having you usually have one large access point into an arena where the ice resurfacer will pass through there, and using it for a multi-purpose use or a variety of different uses is quite common and flexible through the one bay door. Having one on the opposite end doesn't necessarily, that we've seen anyway, increase that, but having the bay doors on one side definitely helps in terms of there's turnover events and a lot of different opportunity to hold key events in there. The underground parking one, that is a strictly the cost challenge, and so in a way, yes, it's possible. It's always possible to do that, but it is an extremely high cost per stall to do underground parking. So if in the future that is desired, that is definitely possible within an analysis, but it is quite cost prohibitive.
Thanks for that. And we'll go to Director Kerr online.
Yeah, thanks so much. I guess I got a few questions, but my first one really is around combining options 4, 5, and 6 together. So if you had the community rink and the extension of the seating in option 5 of the existing large rink, and option 6, you add the running track, would there be any cost synergies in doing those three together? And secondarily, with option 4, the community rink, could you still have the internal street concept as part of that? Thank you.
Through the chair, I'll pass that on to Darren.
Yes, absolutely. Anytime you have a singular scope of work that you can provide to a contractor, you gain efficiencies and synergies to it. And so if you were to provide that scope of work, albeit in different zones of the building, you're still going to have synergies versus building Arena 3 and then at a different time bringing a different contractor on board to do an expansion to Arena 1 or to do so the more you put that all together in a single bundle, the efficiencies will come and you'll have some gains in that area. And then the second point was the internal street scheme that is currently shown for the option 4 as well. So it is assumed to be had for that, which actually creates a higher quality space because you would have sight lines into the arena and into the pool as you're walking down that street, which would provide a nice amenity for the community.
Thanks for that. And we'll go to alternate director Jolicoeur next.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks for the thorough report and the appendix and the technical reports. Quite a lengthy read. I do have some questions of clarifications in Appendix A on page 10. Now, this was a conversation that members of the Commission we're quite curious around our decarbonization strategy that we've since spent some time talking about. It's item 2.3 on page 10 of Appendix A. It speaks there in the second paragraph that it was determined through meetings with staff that no networking strategies were viable at this point. It's quite a short paragraph, and this is obviously a major concern of the board and of the Commission. I'm wondering if we can get a little bit more detail than that. Do we think that's status quo for now? Do we think that there are some promising technologies that we can be looking into for if this moves forward, technology advancements happen quickly. So Yeah, I'm just wondering if you can speak a little bit more, and I'll pause there, and I do have a second clarification question.
Sorry, Trish. Over to you.
Sure, through the chair, I'll pass that on to Darren, so you can talk about that more.
Sure.
HCMA did engage with our decarbonization team as well, so they had some discussions about different options and things like that, so.
Yes, thanks, Trish. Yeah, absolutely. We had, especially at the beginning stages of this feasibility, we had many meetings with Focus, the consultant that was doing the decarbonization strategy, to search for any synergies or strategies that could assist in it. And a lot of the GHG reduction strategies around arenas are when they're paired with pools, and then there's this heat sharing opportunities, and you're able to take the waste heat and use it, and you gain those things. So we did explore the potential of siting this building near your other facility, which is the long-term strategy for your aquatics. And it was deemed that we were not able to fit the facility on the sites there due to, I think the land ownership is not available to us in that area. And so we weren't able to locate it, have that co-location next to the long-term strategy of arena of the pool. And so we lost that synergy between pool and arena. And so it was deemed through that process that a networking process was not as viable, understanding that the aquatic component at this center is not a long-term strategy. But we did have many discussions through the process and looked at different opportunities, but none yielded a networking strategy. But certainly through this process, we would be keeping a stringent eye on best practices to make sure the envelope is suitable and all those different things to reduce GHG emissions through this component itself.
Yeah, that's helpful. And Chair, if that's okay, I just have a follow-up on that last question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so hearing that the constraints that you heard from our staff was as a result of our relationship with the leased property by the aquatic center, and so that's helpful. So I mean, I do have some curiosities around what that potential negotiation of that land use could be for future purposes. But I guess when it pertains to the work that's been done on the land that is in the report, the current pool, there's no synergies with energy savings with the current pool at the sports center?
Well, there could be. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Darren. Trisha's got an answer here for Director Jolicoeur, so I'm going to let her speak.
Through the chair to alternate director. We already use the waste heat energy from Arena 1 to heat the pool. We are looking at through the decarbonization strategy to use the waste heat from Arena 2 to heat other parts of the building. So we would still have another arena that had extra waste heat. It may be possible to share that with the school district in the future, and they have indicated that they are interested in having those discussions, even if we only have 2 arenas. But that's where we are at this point, so.
Thanks for that. And
I'm not sure if there's other people in the room that have their hand up, but.
Yes, and I'll go back to you if you still have more questions.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Over to you, Director Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I really like, so I think it's site number 5, which is the one that's attached. But I'm wondering what the current use is. Is that just a sloped grass field and it's not actively used by anybody right now?
Go ahead.
Through the chair to Director Brown. So the arena that is attached or detached? I'm sorry.
Oh, maybe it's the detached.
Detached?
Sorry, there's too many numbers.
Yes. Number 1 is attached. Number 2 is attached but adjacent to the sports center.
Right, and both are using that area right next to the field. So one is parking, so we'd still have to do the leveling of the ground and
Mhm.
earthworks and all that stuff for parking. So either way, we're adjusting the topography of that site right adjacent to the track, right? Either for parking or the,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And option 2 would provide us with some additional flexible space,
yeah.
which could be used for a multitude of different options.
Yeah, so that's the other thing I wanted to mention. I don't know whether there's a pickleball group currently in the community looking for space, so it might be an opportunity for them to also contribute to the cost of the build with that. So I like that synergy. We all know how popular pickleball is. And then I'm just curious where is the demand for seating for, is that an imaginary, like, is that a, maybe we're gonna have concerts or cultural events, or is it, do the hockey teams need it? Like, where is that, the drive for seating coming from?
Through the chair to the director. So that's exactly what the business case would examine.
Okay.
Would examine whether or not there really is that market demand for those 2,000 seats, or if we're better suited for a community rink.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks. And Director Grieve is up next.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And through the chair, what's that song? I wish I knew then what I know now. I could see us singing that song in 10, 20 years' time. I remember when we did our first session around the future of these facilities, and it was suggested that maybe we should start from scratch and build something that is modern, big enough, efficient enough. And of course, it was a tremendous price tag. But 10, 20 years down the road, it'll look like a bargain. So I'm just wondering if we maybe aren't still trying to patch up something. I mean, we still won't have a 30-meter pool at the aquatic center. It just, whatever you build is going to be too small, too old, and too inefficient in a number of years. So, I hate to throw the whole issue out. But I do think it's worth considering that, what are we building for? We're not building for today. We're not building for us or our kids or even our grandkids, it's for the future. So we really have to think, what would be the most efficient way to do this? I mean, I do know that any facility you build, it's not the upfront cost of construction. It's the operations over a period of time that really kill you. So, we have to consider that too. I just thought I'd throw that out there because, when we are talking about these kind of facilities, and we are projecting 26,000 more people here over the next 10, 15 plus years, it's not really that out there, not that futuristic to really think out of the box and think big. Because we talk about, synergies and efficiencies and GHG emissions and all that. And man, if we had known about that stuff, when we built this in the first place, we could have had all that figured out rather than just tacking on this and tacking on that. So, but to get real, just for a sec, when we talk about parking in any of these scenarios, we talked about underground parking. Well, underground parking is enormously expensive. We know that. But we did talk about this when we built the hospital, and it was poo-pooed at the beginning, the idea of a parkade. Oh, those parkades. But parkade, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, but building a 3-story parkade would be much simpler and much cheaper, would it not, than building underground parking?
I see Darren nodding. Did you have any other comment or question?
The question is, when we're talking about the parking issue, and there is an issue with parking, no matter where we cite this. We've got the Gary Oaks, we've got the Vanier School, we got Towie Creek, we got all those restraints, plus the Vanier Drive on the other side. So I'm just wondering, has it been considered? Has the consultant considered what would be the add-on price of an actual a parkade? Because I would think it would be much less than, and it would free up the space we need. So has there been any thought put to a parkade rather than just flat level parking?
I'll let Trish answer.
Thank you, through the chair. I'll refer it to Darren, but it wasn't part of the scope. And because we were close to the parking count, we didn't consider it at the time, but I'm sure Darren's worked on a number of other initiatives where they've examined looking at parkades and might be able to provide some comments there.
Yes, a parking structure and not going underground parking is more cost effective, and you will have synergies there. We didn't study it here because we felt like we were in the reach of an appropriate parking count. Oftentimes, what we find with arenas, especially and spectator arenas, is that the zoning bylaw is often higher than what's required, and it's quite common that you would get a variant for this type of facility across many municipalities. And so we feel that these parking stall counts are within a reasonable range, and that are much more cost effective as the surface level parking, albeit they are dispersed throughout the site. So there are additional parking spots and zones all over the site. And so it's not a direct adjacency to the facility, but it is available, and the parking numbers do seem, from what we see, to be within an acceptable range.
Thanks for providing that context, and thanks for the question, Director Grieve. I believe it's Director Kerr that's up next. You haven't spoke for a while, so I wasn't keeping track whose hand went up first there. Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. And Darren, thanks for your answer to my prior question. So just as we're still kind of chatting about this, I'll kind of give everyone else my thoughts on where I am right now. I think I really like the idea of combining or doing further study of combining options 4, 5, and 6 together. It gets a community rink added to the community, which addresses the ice time concerns that we've been hearing. I really like the fact that being located next to the current rink 1, that this internal street is created. I really think that's a beautiful addition to the community as well. And would provide like a community space that could be used for many different things. Industry events, or wine and cheese, or festivals, that kind of thing inside both of these rinks. Adding on, so that's about 43 million-ish. Adding on the 5 million for the extra seating for option 5 at rink 1 brings that up to 1,300 and change seats. And then the small amount, maybe even saved with the synergy of having the 3 done together, provides that walking track, which is a real beautiful addition to many communities that have a rink when they drop their kids off or bring their kids to hockey practice, etc. They have the chance to kind of walk around the rink above or an adjacent rink. So for 50 million, you get the extra rink, the community space, the extra seating at rink 1, and the walking track. And versus the 98 million for the 2,000 seat arena, I think that's quite a savings, half price for almost the same benefit. So that's where I'm thinking currently. 2 thoughts in addition, though. I do keep going back to this the last environmental study report we had with our rec facilities, and how I keep having in my head this thought that having a rink and a pool beside each other is such a great benefit for GHG reduction. So I still feel that that's one missing element of this. And I know land and space and those are big concerns, but that's the one missing thing that would just have me over the moon with this project. And then secondly, I do wonder if there are market forces involved where, and I don't think this exists currently, but if a private owner wanted to bring a higher level sports team, hockey team, to the Comox Valley, whatever level of hockey that would be, and I'm not familiar with all the levels, is there a possibility for a public-private partnership? Let's say we did go with option 1, but money was provided by a private company or person to bring in that higher level. Is that something that could be explored, and at what level would you need to put that out for tender or analysis? Thanks.
I'm looking to Trish, or is this a question that you can answer? Okay.
I can, although I think maybe Jennifer thought Doug might have his hand up too online there. In terms of the public-private partnership, if we move forward with the business case to examine the 2,000-seat arena, that could help flush that out a little bit more to see if there is that possibility, and if we have the market to support that, if we also have the ancillary services in terms of hotels and restaurants and all those sorts of things. And whether or not we have the population within the Comox Valley, or we're drawing that in from other places. It would definitely be included as part of that business case study. And I'm sorry, Director Kerr, I might have missed the other questions because I was focused on the public-private partnership at the end.
No, that's great. That answers it. And I just, the other point was just the GHG thing and how I wish we could combine the pool and a new rink together, but maybe that's not possible. Maybe in the next level of analysis that could be looked into. I just wouldn't want us just to forget that. Like, that still should be a thought if there's any creative ways to do that. But just to summarize, I still am kind of leaning towards the options 4, 5, 6 combo. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for those comments. And Director Jolly-Kerr, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And just to piggyback on Director Kerr's comments, I do think if we look back to the strategic planning work that we did as a commission, where we talked about fields and the rinks and the pools, and then there was also that fourth option, which was an entire new site where we would potentially have all the things. As we're getting all these Class D estimates for the aquatic work and now the arena, I do get curious if we should be revisiting that other option, if we're thinking about some of the costs separately and some of the efficiencies. And hearing from our consultant, there are efficiencies by bringing things together, and then of course the decarbonization. So just a thought as we're talking about all the different costs related to the different projects. Yeah, I'm supportive of the staff recommendation. I'm really looking forward to seeing further analysis. I do have a question of clarity. Most of in Appendix A, most of the architectural drawings demonstrate parking, additional 30 stalls near the Gary Oaks, and under the environmental section in the consultant report, it speaks to the City of Courtenay's tree protection bylaw, and specifically naming the unique nature of preservation for Gary Oaks. So the drawings look like none of the Gary Oaks are coming down, but then there's further iteration in the consultant report that says some of them potentially will. So I'm just thinking, we've got the parking variants, with the options that are on the table right now for design and location. Are we also thinking that there will need to be other variances, specifically in this case related to environmental or tree protection based bylaws?
Through the chair, I'll pass that on to Darren.
Yeah, so in the zone where you're seeing the parking that is just north of the building, that would not be encroaching on any of the Gary Oaks. So there is a bit of a gravel zone area adjacent to the facility, and it's turning that into parking area. And so it would not be touching in those trees. So that area is protected and we're not encroaching on that. I think what the report may be referencing to is that there are a few isolated trees that are dotted near the track that the expansion of the parking may need to encroach on. And so it's referencing those kind of one-offs that are kind of dotting around the track facility that may be encroached on.
Okay, thanks. I do have one more clarification question, Chair.
If it's a new one, I'll put you back in the queue, because there's lights on in the room as well. Director Grant.
Well, thank you. I was just wondering on Jonathan's thought. I'm a little bit nervous of that one, in that I get totally where he's coming from, but I mean, we're going to have the oldest rink of the bunch with 500 seats added on the side, which in any rink would be considered the cheap seats. I'm not sure you're going to get what you want out of that. You're only going to get 1,300. I mean, I look forward to seeing what it says, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think you're going to end up with half measure of what you're looking for if you go there. But the other question I had is on number 2. I think that's the one where you talked about room for pickleball courts. I can't keep up with all the numbers, but how many pickleball courts would we be talking about? Are we talking about 1 or 10 or?
Through the chair to director grant. So just the conceptual block layout that Darren and James Cocotillo put together is it shows 3 right now. But there could be room for more. There is definitely a need though for storage and change room facilities.
Okay.
For track and for other user groups. So, you know, there is the possibility of 4, but it would depend on what those flexible spaces are that we would want to provide. And there is also no concession space down there for track meets, for soccer tournament, things like that. So it's a big wide open space that still can be imagined. And
okay, so that makes some sense. Yeah, because 3 pickleball courts, they're asking for like 3,000 right now. So I don't know that it's going to really affect the pickleball community that much, but it's good if we could do it.
Thanks for that. And Director Hardy.
Yeah, thanks. Just again, looking forward to the business case and just taking into account if we have 3 enormous sized arenas in and around the same area, the opportunities for a number of different festivals to occur throughout the year is increased. I'm just wondering, again, going back to the design of a business case, if we should be looking at more commercial kitchen space if we're going to be holding a number of different festivals. I'm also wondering from an agriculture sector perspective with regards to a food hub, looking for an area where the agriculture sector can process food if that's something that we need to take into consideration when we're developing that business case. And again, when we're looking at that area, again, food storage, freezer space, et cetera, if we are developing a commercial kitchen and to host such big events in and around the area. And then finally, I guess with regards to when we start looking at these costs and the events that we can put forward, again, just keeping in mind of the agriculture sector. And again, you know, we've talked in the past of, you know, putting up, you know, a big heritage center or convention center to host agriculture events, et cetera, that when we're looking at these costs, hopefully in the business case, that's one of the things that gets considered as well as the involvement of the agriculture sector throughout the spring and the summer and the early part of the fall. Thanks.
Thanks for those comments. And Director Morin.
Thanks, Chair. Just before we get a bunch of emails, I just wanted to point out that Gary Oaks are protected. There's virtually no circumstances where they're allowed to be removed in the tree bylaw. So I just wanted to make that really clear that, yeah, that because it sounded like, yeah, there was an inference that that some could come down. And I just wanted to make it really clear on the public record that we're not looking at getting rid of Gary Oaks. Thanks.
Thank you. And Director Jolly, actually, Director Hillian has his mic on and he's the first speaker.
Thanks, Chair. My apologies. I had to leave to take a call related to medical issues unconnected to the stitches in my head. But and I may have missed this, so my apologies if that's the case. It seems to me there was originally some talk about the possibility of land acquisition on the other side of Vanier Drive for parking or otherwise. Has that been explored at all as part of this project?
Through the chair to Director Hillian, no, just what was in the drawings was looked at, so.
Okay, I'm just wondering if it potentially is an option because it could. I mean, I've no idea whether that's agricultural land or what, but it seems to me that if there's a possibility of some additional land acquisition there, that the possibility of expansion at some future date comes up. The other question I wanted to ask was with any of the the options, what are the possibilities for an expanded facility at some point in the future? I mean, I do think the chances of a private sector partner coming in with millions of dollars to build a new arena are pretty limited. You know, unless there's some movie stars out there that want to do a Welcome to Courtney documentary and such. You know, given the comments that have been made about how the community is going to grow, do we have, with any of these options, the opportunity to expand seating capacity in the future? Thanks.
Through the chair, I'll put that back to Darren. He did answer that a little bit earlier, so.
Yeah, I think the challenge with this is the structure and the clear span that you provide on day one. So when you choose, you know, to not have spectator seating, you choose a clear span over ice and a structure that accommodates that. And then to add to that in the future, then you're modifying your main structure, and that has challenges in the future. And so if you want to provide accommodation for it in the future, then you're building a larger building with a larger clear span to accommodate for it in the future. But now you're already building a big space. So you don't really get the savings day one, but you have accommodation for it in the future to add the seating. So it is a tricky one to expand onto because of your main structure lines and your clear span. Because if you have those columns close to the ice, and then you expand later, you've got those columns in your sight line for the future. So it's a bit of a tricky one to just kind of tack on seating in this type of event. So it's not impossible, but it is a bit of a tricky situation.
Thanks for that. I just have a couple of small questions too, and everyone else seems to be done with questions. So one small point of clarity at the onset of the presentation, the scope of the project was outlined as NHL ice surface. And is that the same size as the existing Arena 1 and 2, or is it larger, or is that just a standard ice sheet? I'm not clear on the terminology.
We'll put through to Darren, but I believe Arena 1 and 2 are NHL size, and they generally are. It is the standard that we're building to. Sometimes you will see community rinks smaller, but not very many that are Olympic size. And Darren, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, that's correct. We're planning the same size as Arena 1 and 2.
Thanks for that. And then the other question I had was just around option 2 and that additional space for, you know, potential uses like the pickleball courts. Is there some in that kind of high level cost estimate that we're looking at? Are those additional spaces included in this cost and scope of the project at this point, or would those be increases as we kind of refine what we're looking for?
To the chair, those are in option 2. That additional space is included, but it is very high level cost estimate. It's mostly the cost to construct the external area and the backfilling, I believe. Is that correct, Darren? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's currently costed as a shell space, so it would just be kind of it's not fitting out the change rooms, but the cost to fit out those change rooms would be is very small compared to the total cost. So, yeah.
Thanks for that. That makes perfect sense. And then the last question I had just around siting, because we've talked about parking availability and how much parking we can get off the site. But I'm wondering if you have any comments around, you know, the location for the option 2, whether or not that type of parking flow creates safety challenges that are not present in option 1. It just seeing the way that traffic has to basically cross in front of both entrances. I wonder if that was considered a downside, or if that's not really a concern. I'm just curious basically about the flow of traffic, and if one design is better than another, or if you have any comments around that at all.
I'll leave that one to Darren.
Yeah, it's definitely a point of concern. Obviously, whenever there's pedestrian traffic near vehicular traffic, but there are a lot of different ways to mitigate that in terms of, parking surface. You could raise the parking surface in between there, so as vehicles come through, they know that they are on pedestrian territory, not on their territory. There's ways to design that to make it a safe environment. So I don't think that the space of it would preclude that it would be dangerous. There just needs to be some consideration through the design to make sure that we accommodate for safe pedestrian traffic through there.
Thanks for that. And there are a few more lights back on in the room, so I'll go to the other directors. Director Brown.
Thank you, Chair. It just occurred to me, so does each ice rink require its own Zamboni, presuming those are expensive pieces of equipment? And could they be shared if they were attached? Like, is there any saving on an extra Zamboni if they're all attached, or if we move them together? We have a little Zamboni runway around or something?
Through the chair to Director Brown, if we could figure out a Zamboni runway, then possibly they could be shared. We also have to consider scheduling and things like that.
Yeah.
It may not be impossible, but it's right now we have two because of how the arenas are located, and I'm not exactly sure if we could make it work with two with this one, but it could be examined. Thanks.
Thanks. And Director Morin.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, you just kind of reminded me around the pedestrian piece. I'm just wondering if, I don't think any of these options sort of allowed for a dedicated pedestrian walkway in between the school and the arenas, but I think that might be a good consideration. Just I used to work at that high school, and it is a really busy, area there. And I think it would be a nice amenity to add in having a sort of a dedicated pathway. I don't know if that's something that's been looked at or if you foresee that as being something that could be included or not.
Certainly we could look at something in the future if we move.
Yeah, I think the safety issue is it is a concern that if we can actually make some improvements in that area, I think that would be great. Thanks.
Thanks for that. And I see no other lights on, so perhaps we'll dispense with receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt? Seeing none, that's carried. And moving on to the recommendations. Moved by Grant, seconded by Hillian. Is there any discussion on recommendation 1? That staff proceed with the development of a business case that examines and compares the opportunities, benefits, and costs of constructing and operating a spectator arena or a community rink. Alternate Director Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just want to hear from staff if through their analysis, I've heard some of the other directors kind of share an interest in understanding the total costs of I think it was 4, 5, 6, or 5, 6, 7, the additions to Arena 1 and then the community rink. Is that something that would just naturally be part of the assessment?
And actually, I was asking a similar question to Trish, given some of the discussions here, and I want to thank the board for that, or the commission for that very insightful discussion. Option 4 is the community rink, so that is absolutely a piece of this recommendation. And then option 5 is the additional seating around rink 1. Option 6 is a walkway running track of sorts, also around Arena 1. Is that correct? Yeah. So I think the recommendation 1 provides some broad scope to be able to incorporate, as noted in the staff report, all of the different components into a business case. And the concept for options 4, 5, and 6 are also noted in the report from our consultant. So I think that yes, short answer is yes, we can make sure that those pieces are part of what we report back on.
Thanks. And your hand's down now. Thank you. And Director Grieve.
Certainly, we could look at something in the future if we move.
Moving on to the recommendation 2. Moved by Grant, seconded by Hillian. Is there any discussion on recommendation 1? That staff proceed with the development of a business case that examines and compares the opportunities, benefits, and costs of constructing and operating a spectator arena or a community rink. Alternate Director Jolicoeur.
Yeah,
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. I do think, though, that we have to cast our gaze a little farther into the future. There's been some talk around the table here that perhaps we should at least revisit the possibility of building a brand new aquatic and arena. Unfortunately, in neither location we have right now, or the aquatic center or the sports center, is big enough to accommodate a new building. But I do think that somewhere in the analysis, there should be some consideration given to what the total cost is going to be of the two projects, and whether or not we're going to end up spending more on operations and not achieving a lot of our greenhouse gas emission targets, and missing all the opportunities around synergy between pools and arenas and what have you. Because in the long game, as I say, 10, 20 years from now, we're going to have a much bigger population. And rather than cobbling together and stitching together bits and pieces, I think at least as part of the analysis, there should be one paragraph given to that. I know we had a strategic planning session, but as you well know, the world changes by the minute. So I'm just trying to look ahead, and I'm thinking, you know, there's maybe there's another way we can have this level of facility and have the operation budget much cheaper than what we're going to be looking at with all this this cobbled together kind of a plan. So I don't know if it's supported, but I do think at least a paragraph should be given to what the total cost would be of building a brand new efficient structure. Thank you.
Does staff need an amendment for that to be included in the report, or?
I think I would incorporate what the commission looked at through its strategic planning process, and there were some high level considerations for that that potential of a new independent site. So I would look to refresh on that. I'd be careful in what I commit to include in terms of updated costs and figures, because of course, I think as one of the slides that Darren showed, the costs really start to get refined, and we get more certain as we work along the path towards issuing construction drawings and whatnot. So I'd be careful that I wouldn't want to overcommit that we can tell you exact numbers, but I would look back to our strategic planning process and reflect on what was presented then, recognizing that was a year ago, and time does move on. And then it would be to the commission to decide if that is sufficient to allow you to continue moving forward, or taking a different direction at that time. But I think for the presentation today and for the work that's been done today and to move forward, the focus really is on the Vanier site. But I can reflect on what was presented a year ago.
Yeah, thanks for that, CAO. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of big pictures planning that's happening, or that we should pause and give some consideration to. But this specific project, what we looked at for costing during our capital planning versus now is somewhere between 3 to 10 times as much as when we were talking about this time last year. So I can't imagine that the other site wouldn't be impacted by similar cost escalations. And that's always the biggest constraint when we're making these decisions, is how we're going to fund them. Sorry, go ahead, Director Grief.
And further to Director Hardy's suggestion, can there be some tacit consideration given as well to things like a proper legal kitchen and some facilities of that nature, because it would be a multi-purpose building and it could be used for concerts and whatnot. So I think that should be something that's considered in the original plan as well.
Thanks. Does staff need additional direction for that to be included, or?
I think in the business cases, I understand that we'd be looking to the community, into the Comox Valley, and what is provided in the Comox Valley in regard to the ancillary services and supports that would be needed for a facility of this kind to support events in the community of this kind. I don't believe there is a community kitchen or a food hub concept envisioned for this particular dirt sheet of ice, whether it is a spectator arena or a community rink. I think that would be a greater departure from what we've currently seen presented here. But absolutely on the business case analysis and looking to the community and what ancillary services are available in the community to support these kind of events, that would be a big piece of what we are looking to see, as Trish noted, on catering services, on food supply services. I think on the impact of the ag community, we've just walked through an ag plan. So there's an overlap there, certainly, on some of that analysis for the business case. Leave it at that.
Thanks for that. And seeing no other lights on, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And I can't see Director Arbor. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, I'm opposed, Chair.
Arbor opposed, and all others voted in favor, I believe.
The recommendation, second.
Moved by Hillian, seconded by Grant. Any discussion on recommendation number 2? I just have a small question on this. Given that we were talking about our GHGs and energy efficiencies, and we're looking to engage with our school district partners on this project, could we include some type of discussion or information for the school district around that early stages of district energy and kind of bringing them up to speed on some of the discussion that the board has had? I'm not clear on whether or not the school board is aware that there's a desire, or if that conversation has been limited to a staff level. So I don't know that we need to amend the recommendation, but I just wanted to flag that I think that would be a useful piece if we're going to present to the school board on the project.
Certainly.
Thanks. Okay, seeing no lights on, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed?
I'm opposed, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Arbor opposed, and that passes. All right, we've made it to termination. Thank you, everyone.